But first, I want to talk about how tough it is being a Prime Minister and how sometimes you need to let your hair down, as Anthony Albanese showed us this week.
Well, the Prime Minister has followed in the footsteps of his fellow Labor PM, Bob Hawke, and sculled a beer in front of a cheering crowd. Anthony Albanese was at the Gang of Youths concert at Sydney's Enmore Theatre last night when he was spotted by attendees and urged to down his drink.
It was well received by the media, and so it should be. The crowd loved it. But what happens when a Liberal Prime Minister does the same thing? Scott Morrison came under fire for downing a beer in 2018. What does it say about Australians that Scott Morrison thinks he can connect to us through alcohol abuse? Wrote Age columnist Duncan Fine. He sounds like a fun bloke, doesn't he? And then a sneering Dana Daniel of the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age attacked the PM for not only drinking beer, but his religion as well. I didn't think beer chugging was part of the Pentecostal tradition, she tweeted. Very nice. And remember this from 2015 with then Prime Minister Tony Abbott. Well, if you thought the beer was flowing, well, it was nothing compared to the sanctimony that followed. View from the street. PM reminds nation that binge drinking is heaps cool, wrote Sydney Morning Herald columnist Andrew Street. It was an unmistakably and assertively macho act amid a chanting group of hyped-up dudes, wrote journalist Judith Ireland in The Age. And the hypocrisy made its way to the Sydney Morning Herald editorial. It's a bad look, it condescended. Especially when you see young boys, role models linking beer games with sporting success, notably without necessarily any connection with women. So what did the Sydney Morning Herald have to say this week? Kerry O'Brien hailed a man of the people. That he's encouraged to scull his beer as a throwback to another age, but possibly symbolises that knockabout nature so revered in Australian folklore. Well, now I'm joined by broadcaster and wordsmith Kel Richards and Rebecca Weiser from The Spectator. Rebecca, why don't we start with you? Two very similar events, Prime Ministers having a drink in a casual setting, two very different ways it's been reported.
Yes, I'm afraid this sort of bias goes back decades. I mean, we saw with Bob Hawke, and I think that there's a conscious effort to somehow link Anthony Albanese with Bob Hawke because he was such a popular Prime Minister, but we saw again that it was all right to have a beer and to have a drink and really, you know, as your grabs highlighted, it's only actually okay so long as you're a Labor Prime Minister, it seems. That seems to be the rule of thumb. So, I mean, we've also seen this strange sort of case overseas with the Finnish Prime Minister, you know, and she's having a drink or dancing and everybody's sort of shocked. Who knows? But in Australia, in any case, it seems to be a fairly political bias, which is kind of tiresome.
It's very funny. I mean, I think the backlash of the Finnish Prime Minister I thought was a bit too much as well. But then to describe a Prime Minister, a Conservative Prime Minister having a beer as alcohol abuse, but to celebrate Albo, I can't understand how the same newspaper could run both pieces.
Well, exactly. And the point is, how hard are they going to work to tell us, hey, we're a Labor media outlet, OK? That's what we're in favour of. We really want we want to advertise our bias. We want to make it really, really clear so that if Albo does this or Bob Hawke did it years ago, bookending things where Liberal Prime Ministers did it and we didn't approve, we really want you to understand that. I also wonder whether they're a bit worried about Albo because every time I look at Albanese, I think this is a man who has had a charisma bypass operation. This is not an exciting, colourful, interesting man. This is a very dull man. So let's surround him with kids at a rock concert and have him scull a beer and try and give him a little bit of personality with a capital P. Didn't work, but it was a good effort. But it is deciding to advertise we are Labor media. That's what's nuts. I mean, why can't they even pretend to be a little bit balanced?
Yeah, I wonder if it was strategy as well. I wonder if, that the stylists and the strategists say you've got to make these public appearances to these social events. It's going to make you look a bit more like Bob Hawke. I think you're right. Maybe that's what they're going for.
That's exactly right. And I mean, we've got this summit, which Bob Hawke was sort of famous for his summit. So I think it's a very conscious effort. But you know what? It's all very well, and Albanese is having a honeymoon at the moment. But what's really worrying the Australian people is the cost of living. And they will go along with this for only so long. I mean, we've had Albanese suddenly admit, there's only so much that the government can do. My goodness, that's a discovery he's made now that he's Prime Minister, but relentlessly criticise the previous Prime Minister for not doing more in these sorts of areas.
That's such a good point. They were very critical of the coalition for the cost of living pressures. Now, all of a sudden, it's out of their control. It's just global pressures.